Hey all, welcome to ShareTrack. This is Raj here. Friends, out here in Toronto, it's Saturday evening around 8:59 p.m. So our weekend is almost over. But out there in the US, you have a long weekend because it's Memorial Day on Monday. And I wish you guys the very best for Memorial Day. Day to honor the sacrifices of veterans who sacrificed their life for the nation. So I hope you have a good Memorial Day. That said, I thought this is the perfect opportunity today to reflect on what is to be done going forward. I'm going to share with you my thought process based on which I decided that for the near future, I have to stay invested because cash is trash. That's what my conclusion was. And I'm going to walk you through my rationalization. And at the end of this, I would like you to give your feedback in the comment section below. Because friends, as you know, I am a regular investor just like you guys. I have no special extra knowledge or information. So if we share information, like if you put your message in the comment, that helps me a lot to understand various perspectives that I might not have considered. So please do comment. With that said, let's get started. Welcome back, friends. So it seems that the debt ceiling has been more or less resolved. It's almost a done deal. If that is the case, what is going to happen is that the Treasury is going to draw up more IOUs and it's going to ask for money to spend. And the US debt is going to go up. It's in trillions of dollars. And it's very different for countries that are not reserve currencies. And those kind of countries cannot handle this kind of debt because the more currency you print, the less value for the currency, because currency should only be printed after value has been created. That's the way it should proceed. But when you create money without creating value in the first place, for which you're compensating with money, it means you're doing some kind of deficit financing. And deficit financing always leads to depreciation of the value of the currency, as a result of which assets are going to cost more because you have to give them more currency for the same asset. So in that kind of a situation, it's always better to be invested in an asset because when the value of the dollar goes down, the value of the asset goes up in dollar terms. So for example, if I have a share which is worth $1 and the dollar depreciates by 20%, now my share will be worth $1.2 because the share represents the value of the company. So anything tangible, whether it is gold or whether it's a property, a real estate or something like that, which actually produces something, will have value, and that value will be expressed in dollars. And because the value of the dollars is going down, you have to pay more dollars to buy that stuff. So that's the way I'm looking at it, and that's where I have the adage, cash is trash, and asset is the one that will give you value. Now, having said that, let us park this concept separately. It's a separate discussion. Now, coming to what would happen if IOUs are raised by the Treasury, then a Treasury will have to get money from the reserve. So this is how I think it works. If any of you think it works differently, please put it in the comment. It can change my theory. So once that happens, there is going to be more money flooding into the market. And if more money comes into the market, we are having an inflation problem. The inflation problem is going to get worse. So in order to make the worse inflation situation go away, either the Fed will have to increase the interest rates or the Fed will have to buy up, will have to sell bonds to mop up the funds from the market. And when the Fed sells those bonds, it will have to pay a higher interest rate. So the national burden of interest will go up. So it's a vicious circle. And I think the United States is in a bad shape. So whatever US does, it's most likely to be difficult to get off the spiral of increasing debts. And we'll soon have the next debt negotiation after that. But at the same time, the other dynamic that is playing out is that China, for example, holds a whole lot of US debt. And Japan is the next big country that holds US debt. And of late, in the last 6 months, many countries have increased the gold in their reserve, foreign exchange reserve. They have added gold in big numbers, like countries like Turkey, India, a few other countries. They have increased their gold in their reserve, and that comes at the cost of the US dollar. So it's very difficult for countries like China and Japan to just dump the dollar, because it is the store of value of everything that they have given for cheap in the last so many decades to Americans, in exchange of which they got the dollar. So this leads to a sense of frustration in the in some circles, that this is just a piece of paper. It's not backed with anything. It's just a promise to pay. And every debt ceiling sees this kind of a drama where people are negotiating with each other willfully or blissfully oblivious of what is happening with their largest creditors who are holding US treasuries in their balance sheet. So the world is looking for an alternative. And if America doesn't get its act in place, then there will be an alternative, which is most likely to be in the crypto world, or most likely to be a currency pegged to gold or something like that. But it's in the works, and it's also possible that more country to country individual currency trades can happen. For example, Spain trading with, let us say, Australia, using Spanish pesos and Australian dollar. Those kind of agreements will start increasing in numbers, while decreasing US dollar in the foreign exchange reserves for many countries. So that's the trajectory I see forward. And in order to arrest those things, there needs to be a lot of fiscal discipline. One of the advantages that the US has, because the dollar is a reserve currency, and because the world is parking their funds in US dollars, is that US has a strong dollar, which makes imports cheap. And when imports are cheap, people pay less to enjoy a high standard of living. Now, if the US dollar was to devalue, then the cost of everything goes up, and along with that will be a drop in the standard of living of Americans. And when that happens, it's not going to be a good political situation for any of the politicians. So it's very important to preserve the validity of the US dollar as a reserve currency. One of the strengths which enabled US dollar become the reserve currency is the victory of the Allied forces in the World War, where US demonstrated the atomic bomb, and it showed world leadership, and it said that it can police the world. And the tribute that the world was giving in exchange was US dollar being a reserve currency and their trust in US. So initially US dollar was backed by gold, and when participating countries like France started asking for gold in exchange of dollars, that's when Nixon decided that that would no longer happen, and gold will no longer be pegged with the dollar, and gold will go separate ways, and dollar will just be a fiat currency. So all these things have happened already in the past, where step by step things are moving in the different direction. And if the US was to reduce its spending in military, and if the US was to bring back its troops from various parts of the world, and create various organizations like Quad, and participate in NATO, and put more emphasis on NATO and Quad and other such bodies, taking over the world policing work and maintaining geopolitical stability, then the value of US dollar as a global currency, as a reserve currency, is going to go down, because there will be other alternatives that will slowly and credibly emerge, which would take over that role. So it's very important, I think, for United States, especially the people who are electing leaders, to elect intelligent, strategic leaders who understand the nuances of how something that you do in Japan by keeping the troops in Japan is helping the United States instead of thinking in crass terms that it's costing us so much money to keep the troops there, you either pay us or we are taking our troops back. Those kind of retail trader mentality does not work in geopolitics to maintain the power structure that the US has meticulously built up in order to be able to control the WHO, to control the IMF, to control the WTO, and all the major organizations, including United Nations. It's all built upon strategic alliances and putting military bases in different places, giving protections in different areas, and a lot of collaborations. Those kind of things cannot be maintained if one became very transactional in nature. So at this point of time, I'm looking at the voices coming from Trump and DeSantis. All of them are talking about pardoning the January 6 guys, and DeSantis is also talking about pardoning other people. So those kind of messages, and also the total abuse of the First Amendment about talking anything that comes into their mind and into their mouth without any consequences, may be a sense of freedom. But I think that it is doing a lot of disservice to the US dollar overall. And friends, I am not an American. I have an axe to grind in this because we invest in Nasdaq. And it's all denominated in US dollars. So what happens to US does matter to the rest of the world. And if the US dollar was not a reserve currency, we wouldn't have bothered about it. And because US dollar is the reserve currency and US gets all those benefits, US also has got to think about the global situation. And they have to demonstrate more responsibility when they conduct themselves. Because honestly, when I look at some of the sound bites that I see on TV from the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, Lauren Boebert, Jim Jordan, the kind of things that are happening out there does not inspire a whole lot of confidence. If it wasn't America and if it was some other country, I mean, the whole world would have been on top of it right now, and there'll be election observers, and there'll be forced elections and things like that. That would have been done even while Trump was president. But all those things did not happen, and now also there is not much of intervention by anybody because US has got its military bases all over the place. US has got the biggest spending on defense, and those kind of the remnants of what Trump could not dismantle is still there, and that's what is still giving the residual power. But with repeated behavior like this, the goodwill and everything is being frayed every passing day. And one dreads what's going to happen in the next election. And if Trump or DeSantis do come into the White House, then it's going to be very, very difficult for United States because the rest of the world also has got people, and the rest of the world also have their aspirations. And most importantly, China, Japan, and many countries have huge US dollar treasury bonds and everything in their reserves for which they want value. And the value has to be paid. When you dine in a restaurant, either you pay the bills or you wash the dishes. So those things definitely apply overall in geopolitical situations. So I hope that the next election kind of clears up everything and make things look better. But right now, the way the US Constitution is being interpreted and implemented does not inspire great confidence, because you have an Attorney General who wouldn't do anything while day in and day out on TV people are mouthing off anything and everything and getting away with it. And it is having an impact on a lot of low information voters, which can become a mob if the next election doesn't go the way the mob expects. So that thing is happening, and Attorney General is not able to do anything. You don't hear a peep from the Attorney General. And the courts and everything, courts are trying their best, but most cases are moving slower than molasses in a filter. So people have been constant. There are so many YouTube channels that have become million subscribers worth in this last 4 to 5 years just talking about Trump and just talking about how horrible GOP is, and that is giving millions of subscribers. And on the other side of the spectrum, talking about how bad Nancy Pelosi is, how bad AOC is, and the woke leftist and the squares and all those controversial things. But that doesn't build a nation. A nation is built when there are aspirations and you say, okay, our nation is going to improve the standard of living of its people. People who are working 2 jobs to put bread on the table are no longer going to have to do that. We are going to improve the standards. And in order to do that, we are going to legislate. That kind of a thing would help. In Florida, insurers are not insuring properties for roof. And if that is the case, what legislation can we do in order to improve the situation and give coverage for people? And if it's got something to do with the environment, what are the proactive measures we can do? Those are the things that one looks for. But what we have seen in the last so many years is that Fauciism is bad, environment and other thing is woke. That's exactly what is coming in. And if we have 4 more years of that after the next election, then definitely United States is going to find itself in a big deal of problem. Friends, I'm sorry. You may not like the message that I'm bearing, but that's what it seems to me as a dispassionate observer. I wouldn't call myself totally dispassionate. I'm passionate to the extent that I'm invested in Nasdaq. Apart from that, no. And that's exactly the reason why I'm going to stay invested. Because if the value of the US dollar goes down, of course, I'm going to have exchange risk in Canada. That's why I'm investing in the Nasdaq through Canadian hedged funds, which have got all the blue chips in the US, the big ones. So I'm invested through that, so that my foreign exchange fluctuation is taken care of because it's hedged, and I continue to have position in those big companies out there, and Apple and Microsoft, Amazon. These are all fabulous companies. And if the value of the dollar went down, the share price of these companies are going to shoot up. Because what happens when recession comes in is that money is trash. And companies might have to let go of people. But typically when a company lets go of people, it's cutting its costs. Therefore, the margin is protected. So those kind of activities will happen. And when recovery comes back again, all the patents are in place, all the products are in place, all the use cases are in place. It just gallop, and the price will come back up again. So I'm going to stay invested in US blue chip companies. I do not believe that the US political system may deliver, but the US companies are really strong. And those companies, even in a difficult environment, can hold value. And that value, when denominated in dollars, is going to give us more dollars. And if the exchange rate is taken care of through hedging, then I think I am safe. So I have a vote of confidence for US stocks, but I do not have a vote of confidence for the US dollar. So this is my thesis, my friends. And some of you who are Americans, we have a good portion of our viewership which is American. I can see it from the US statistics. I request you to give your feedback, because you live and work and spend in the United States. You're looking at various media outlets and various news articles, and you are experiencing US. So please give your feedback on 2 points. One is, how confident are you that the US dollar will retain its value and it's not going to devalue? And second thing is my concept that cash is trash right now, and that being invested in blue chip Nasdaq companies is the best way to go ahead to preserve value of our investments. So those are the 2 questions on which I want your opinion. Please put it in the comments below, and I would be really grateful for that. With that, my friends, I'd like to bring this video to an end. Thanks and have a great day. Bye for now. I'll catch up with you in the next video.